Namaste, gang. Today I wanted to just do a little supplement to a little the night rant where I was talking about my mom's death. I had published a story about it, basically the story that I told there, but this is one of two things I've ever really had published. And so I have the book. It was just sitting on my shelf over there. So as a supplement to that content, I'm going to go ahead and read that for you today. And this is the anthology compiled by Sally Lehman, my buddy. Really nice lady. We used to do readings, and we went on a tour once actually and did readings all over the West. And I emceed it and told jokes, and then I got violently ill. And boy, that was just a horrible time in a lot of ways and a wonderful time in a lot of other ways. Not the point of today's story. This is Bear the Pall is a really interesting idea. Sally was all about kind of anti-commercial stuff, like you can't write about that. Abuse, trauma, violent, bloody pregnancy kind of stuff that nobody wants to talk about. And she was charitable enough to give a voice to authors who wanted to talk about things like that. So how about an anthology of short stories and poems and other works pertaining to the death of a parent? Not a very commercial idea, but if you had one of these, there was an outlet for you. When she mentioned that she was collecting for it, I was like, well, I have a parent that died and I could probably squeeze something out. And so here it is. The main thing I remember about that day is the sun. It really seemed to be taking up too much of the sky, splashing into places where it didn't belong, reflecting everything back into me. I was genuinely concerned that the world was ending. My little situation. The sun was exploding. There really wasn't much difference. The world's got to end while I'm around. This moment. As far as I know, there was nothing going on with the sun. Snow covered the ground all through January. I walked along the river path just because I had nowhere to go. Nothing to get away from. No reason to move at all and no reason not to. My body crunched over the packed crust of ice. The river made a soft commotion underneath its winter cover, and the light filled up the sky like those blobs inside a lava lamp, but I couldn't tell what its color was. Blue, red, yellow, no color, all color, black. It was oppressive, and it was numb all over. I walked this trail often. It best maximized beauty per distance from my front door, and it was somewhat private. Whatever I was going to feel, I wasn't crying yet. Hadn't found my in, I guess. I wasn't really thinking about anything, not really feeling anything, but my intestines grumbled at odd intervals, and I knew on some level that I was doing little more than allowing the weight of this to catch up with me. Maybe it never will catch up. Maybe this is how I take things. I felt nothing. Was I okay? That's what everyone was going to ask me for the rest of my life. But what they wouldn't understand is that I was. Everything was okay. This is how things are. If you don't know that people die, you're the one that's not okay. What am I missing here? I thought to myself. It felt like a part of me was gone. Not like that. I mean, it felt like part of my brain had shut down. This certainly was an altered state of consciousness. The night before didn't feel like 1,000 years ago. It felt like the night before. I had gone to Finnegan's Family Restaurant around midnight with James and Bob. We stayed there like we always did until around 2 a.m. Around midnight, it was all about the stoned young intellectuals and tabletop gaming nerds. This girl, Lindsay, came into the restaurant. She and her friend even came and sat with us boys. I could tell Lindsay had some sort of crush on me, curiosity at least. It was not common for girls to be interested in me. I was 17 years old and never had a girlfriend. Actually, that was the night I turned 18. I made no show of it. I've always hated my birthday, even back then. I'll never really know what happened to my mom that night. I woke up the following morning, probably about noon, with 3 dudes crashed around my big converted garage bedroom. I grabbed some shorts and a t-shirt and headed upstairs to the shower. There was a spring in my step. I guess it was because of Lindsay, but I wasn't really aware of that. I sang to myself in the shower, which wasn't exactly ordinary for me. I came out of the bathroom kind of in a hurry to get past the living room before Grandma interrogated me about whatever was worrying her in those particular days. "Honey?" Too late. I was captured. Grandma was sitting in her chair, permanently settled into a contour the shape of her back and bottom, like a sweet, adorable version of Emperor Palpatine. Sitting across from her in a wooden chair was a man I'd never seen before. I assumed he was one of Grandma's old traveling friends. They do this, old people. They have all these friends littered from all different parts of their life, and these people come by to visit once every decade or so. There's enough of them that we were seeing maybe one every 2 weeks. It was always awkward and boring for me, so I was careful to dodge those situations. This man was typical, mustache, glasses, rosy cheeks. He was a sheriff, too, apparently. Kind of weird to wear his uniform in here to visit Grandma. "Honey, could you come in here and sit down for a second?" Grandma said, and she sounded normal, a little grave, but not losing her shit, not hysterical. It's a family trait. Or maybe this is just how people are. But in the movies, people are hysterical when stuff like this happens. "We've got some bad news." The sheriff speaks to me slowly. I grow increasingly uncomfortable. Yes, I get it. Should I cry? Should I scream and run or something? I just stood there, kind of half grinning. I knew he didn't think I understood what he was saying, but I absolutely did. And I thought, God damn it, Mom, I knew something like this would happen. We all did. I had nothing to say to the sheriff. He told me everything I'd want to know. It wasn't really an accident, even. Just one of those things that happens. "Thank you," I said to the sheriff. Mom had been living in a bus that year outside of town. Before that, she always lived in this house under Grandma's wing, taking care of us kids. Dad existed. There were boyfriends. But from my perspective, it was always just Mom and the boys. Mom and me, really, and some of my friends. Here I was, though, full grown. I guess it was about time for her to let go of it all and find her own way. She had no money, not much going on other than an antique refinishing business, and a charming personality that she herself underrated way too much. She moved into a school bus with bales of hay packed under it for insulation, consorting with these homeless stoner types down by the river. And I wasn't mad at her. I didn't judge her. I came out to the bus and we talked about life. And she smoked me up. And we got little inflatable things and floated on the river with the two dogs, Byron and Ken Dog, running all around barking. She wasn't an alcoholic, but she was depressed. One time, I had to duct tape her hands and legs together to prevent her from driving the truck to the store to get cigarettes because she was too drunk. I had her trapped in the bathroom, and she hopped towards me, pathetically, angry but laughing. But then she fell, and her head hit the linoleum, and I knew it would leave a bruise, and she couldn't stop herself from falling all taped together. She looked up at me as she fell, then on her knees, drunk and stupid, in the bathroom. She just burst out crying, and it melted me. So I immediately ripped off all the tape, and she charged out the front door, slammed it, and went and got her cigarettes. It's not like she or I knew she would die, but we both knew it was a possibility, an eventuality. I didn't hold it against her. If she died, I would still be there for her. And so here I was, crunching along with her, leaving footprints in the snow, because she had become the sun, and she was more fierce and passionate than anything her little boy could ever dream up. I was still just crunch, crunch, crunching down here. She had ascended, and she left me here. But she was still here. I had more snow crunching to do, and in between, I would have these dreams. Oh, there you are. Of course, you're not really dead, but Mom, seriously, where have you been all these years? Would you believe it? I really thought you were dead. Oh, it's just so funny. And then there's that dissonance in the dream, where you know it's a dream, but it's still real. This isn't really my mom, but she's around here somewhere. What kind of nonsense are you talking? How could she be dead? I know her. She has this habit of driving around with an empty gas tank, and the fuel light is just the first of many indicators that it's time to drop another 5 in the tank if you can possibly manage it. In spite of this, she came to see me on my birthday. We never spent this much time apart before. She was getting sentimental with me. Just weeks before, she came to the house to see me in the late afternoon. She didn't seem drunk, but there was something a little off about her. Like maybe she was afraid, but she didn't want me to know. She stood by the side of my bed for a long time. I was sleeping out on the deck, basically a roof and some chicken wire and wood separating me from the elements. I liked the smell of real air when I went to bed, and to hear the animals and traffic and neighborhood kids around me in the night made it easier to sleep. I woke up and saw her, and she smiled the warmest smile I've ever seen. "I love you, sweetheart," she said. I looked down and saw that her elbow was injured. She didn't remember how these things kept happening. The elbow was gnarly. It was the kind of tear you'd get from a bicycle crash, but she'd probably just fallen over. It needed stitches. She wasn't going to go to the doctor. It would leave a scar. She would have many scars, just building and building until her beautiful face and youthful body had all the character of a genuine salt of the earth sort of antique. I didn't even ask about the bloody composite flesh on her elbow. She held my hand for a moment and sat on the bed, fell back and cuddled with me. I was crying, but my face was hidden. I really missed her. Grandma came in and snapped a picture, said hi to Mom, and then left before any arguing could occur. I never saw her on my 18th birthday. She came to the house while I was at Finnegan's. She and this guy and the 2 dogs came to the house in the pickup truck, like a drunken circus. Grandma told them I wasn't home, so they eventually decided to go back to the bus without me. It was about 40 miles from my house. They ran out of gas. They marched through the snow to the closest bar, and at some point, Mom flipped out, apparently. This was a side of her that came out every now and then. She became completely outraged and inconsolable, and in that state, she tended to abandon people, scream, slam doors. She raged out at the bar by the side of the snowy road just before Clearwater Junction. It was mostly dark, but moonlight reflected between the snow and the clouds, probably at or below freezing. Who knows what was going on in her head. She never made it back to the truck. The native guy left the bar without ever tracking her down. I never saw him again, but he was the one that ended up taking the dogs. Her body was found a little ways off from the side of the road early in the morning by a man just going about his business. Her clothing had gotten soaked. She'd gotten hypothermia, and she just collapsed in the snow and slept. After talking with the sheriff, I walked back down into the converted garage that was my bedroom. Jim, Bob were all awake, sluggish. They knew something was up. "Guys," I said, "Mom's dead." There was no change in anything. These 3 sluggish boys rubbing their eyes, one with wet hair standing in the middle of the room. "She's dead, guys," I repeated. "Josephine's fucking dead. Froze to death." I didn't say it any particular way. They didn't react any particular way. We all understood. We were not in denial. Mom was dead. Our mom was dead. There was nothing else to say. Eventually, I would have to play my part in the next stage of everything. I would have to drive up Patty Canyon and tell one of my brothers, and I'd have to make all sorts of phone calls. Everyone would bring me gifts and thoughts, cards, sit in the corner of the room awkwardly with nothing to say. They were afraid to say anything nice or funny for the next 6 months because they didn't want to make me feel uncomfortable. Everyone knew I was closer to Mom than anyone else in the world. They would give me space and time to deal with it, but their perspective of me had changed. I was, in some way, supposed to become the new Josephine. because everybody knew she had invested everything into me. My friends had already made plans for the day. I was still entertaining the notion of participating, but I knew that eventually this thing was going to hit me. It just hadn't yet. So I just left the house to take a walk. I was just walking through the snow, feeling my mother's soul bleed into every shadow of my reality as clear, penetrating light, and the sun and God and Josephine and the universe squeezing me like a sponge until finally the tears came out. I talked to her, to the sun, crunching, sobbing. I thought she was more beautiful than ever. People who knew Josephine, they'll tell you the truth. She was always the sun, not just because she was my mom, not just because she was dead. There was just something about her. She was special. She never really belonged in this world. I would spend the rest of my life making her proud, even though she'd never see it, and even though she'd be proud no matter what. I asked her one time what she thought was the hardest thing in the world, and she said that it must be songwriting. The first song I ever wrote was about her, but I never play it. Thanks for listening, guys. I didn't know it was gonna get like that. That was fun. Namaste.